Rocketeer, yeah, like that was, I saw that in the theater when I was a kid, and
That's
I
awesome.
loved it. I thought it was like the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And I just remember those days where it's like the baby boomers were running the world, you know, and it's
Yeah.
like they just like the boomers decided Tron sucked. So like Tron sucked. It was a bomb. But like the kids loved it. Like, you know, I
yeah.
loved it. Like it was like my favorite, still is one of my favorite movies. And then Rocketeer was another one where it's like every kid who saw the Rocketeer loved it, but then the boomers, you know, deemed it a bomb, so a bomb it is. And
I loved it so much.
Yeah. And Masters of the Universe, Dolph Lundgren Masters of the Universe was the same thing. Like like there was such great word of mouth about that too, because like, you know, there were some kids who's like I didn't see it opening weekend or anything, but then kids were like, it's really good, it's really good.
Like,
you know, some of them kids who like started to like kind of outgrow He-Man a little bit. It was kind of like, no, this is good stuff. Like it's a He-Man with more of an edge to it. You know?
Yeah, they were saying that to me. I'd be like, yeah, that maybe I'll get back into them.
Right? Yeah, because I'm not into them anymore. So
I'm not nothing to do with them right now.
Yeah. But, Rocketeer, not the Rodketeer.
I'm like, why do they have that?
I love the whole retro look, and I hadn't read the comic by this point, but it was like in those early days of like graphic novels and stuff starting to show up at like bookstores in the mall and stuff.
Yeah.
Rocketeer was one of them. It would be this like kind of thicker, like it wasn't quite what we think of as a graphic novel, but it was like thicker than a comic of the Rocketeer would be in there. And I kind of like looked through, I'm like, this looks really interesting, you know.
His costume is just his outfit with just a helmet on.
Yeah.
That's like the one, I was like, I love that aspect.
That utilitarian, because the setting is you know, the 1940s. So it's like, you know, people in our day don't dress like that, where like a guy who's like an aviator back then, like, yeah, that is how he dressed. But so it reads as a costume. Yeah, even though it's just his like, you know, work clothes.
And for a long time, the lead, Billy, I think his name is like Billy Campbell.
Yeah.
There were like around my friends, we were like, at some point, we're like, that's Bruce Campbell's cousin. Like,
right.
We had like a
kind of
fake,
looks like him, yeah.
A fake like I don't know. We're like, yeah, that's him. He's got a brother in the movie business, or his cousin in the movie business.
And yet the comic is by Dave Stevens, like a famous comics guy, and this was like his big like. This was kind of his big creation. Like he kind of toyed around with some other stuff, but like this was the thing that stuck. This was kind of like a hit. The comic was like a hit from day one. It was this like surprise hit out of nowhere, and
I'd love to read it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. There's not a ton. Like he wasn't a super prolific creator. He was kind of a perfectionist. There's a really good documentary about Dave Stevens, but he was like kind of a perfectionist, which is sort of why people were just into this from day one. It was just like this amazing looking comic and just felt really fresh.
I love the aesthetic and the title is iconic.
And then he got to be like, you know, pretty heavily involved in the production, like which is nice, because sometimes in those kind of cases, like the person gets completely sidelined. But yeah, he got to be involved, and I mean everybody involved was just so happy with the outcome of it, and then it just didn't do any business. But I was there. I mean, I you know, you talk about going to the movies by yourself. I was there by myself.
That's awesome. Like we had this on VHS. We rented it. We bought it. I didn't get to see it in the theater, but
yeah, like I saw it in the theater. I thought it was like the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And then I was telling my parents about it. I'm like, oh, this movie's great. You got to see it. And so then we rented it. And it wasn't as good as I remembered it being in the theater. My parents were like, what are you talking about? This movie stinks. What, you know?
No.
So like that. But again, like now looking back, I was like, oh, maybe it wasn't as good as I thought it was. But looking back now, I realize it's like, oh yeah, the theatrical experience is a very different experience than the VHS. And it's not even widescreen. You know, you're seeing like the little
smushed.
Yeah, where it's like the sides are cut off. But if you know, like this kind of all this aviation and stuff, and then when he's flying, really is like spectacular in the theater. And the other thing of it, and I think like some of the positive reviews of the time captured this too, was that the flying effects were really convincing. Like
yes,
Christopher Reeve's Superman was kind of the gold standard, and I feel like they, and I think partly because the character it's like Greatest American Hero or something. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of a bumbler, like, and he's learning and he's getting better as he goes on. So sort of seeing him like flail and fail in the sky makes it a little more like seem a little more realistic than just a guy who's like, you know,
I'm really good at this rocket pack.
Right.
I think about him plugging that bullet hole in the rocket pack with the gum.
Right.
Probably like I thought about it today. That's what, I think about that all the time. Like,
you know, after seeing the movie, like I love the comic, but after seeing the movie, like I loved the movie, and then I read the comic, and I was kind of disappointed in the comic because in the movie it's much more melodramatic than the comic. Like in the movie, it's like the good guys are good, the bad guys are bad, and you know, and all this stuff. Where in the comic, it's a lot more kind of gray. And by the end of it, it's kind of like a misadventure. Like by the end of it, everybody's friends. You know, it was all a misunderstanding and stuff by the end of the comic. And I didn't like that. I want a thing where like, you know, Zeppelins blow up and people get burnt to a crisp. You know, the bad guys get their comeuppance and stuff. Like, I didn't want this, you know, sort of, you know, happily ever after kind of ending.
Timothy Dalton, what a great villain in this. Holy shit.
The other thing, like, again, it's a Disney thing. And I feel like Disney was like the wrong, I mean, same with Tron. It was the wrong home for something like this, because the other thing with the comic had a little bit of an edge. The comic was kind of racy. It had like a Betty Page, like Betty in the comic is Betty Page. She's basically Betty Page, and so it had like, you know, a little bit of you know, Cinemax, you know, kind of, and they don't have that in this. Like Jennifer Connelly is more of kind of like, you know, a you know, an all-American girl or whatever, like a good girl or whatever, where like, which I think is an element that like would have really helped with the movie. This sort of a little bit of spice, you know.
Yeah, like they released this under, you know, the regular Disney umbrella. They could have done it with their Hollywood pictures.
Yeah,
like they should have, like the R division. They should have bumped this over. Like,
and it's Joe Johnston directing.
Oh my God.
And like, I mean, so great. And when he did Captain America, I was like, this is so great, because it's like, I love the Rocketeer, and it's like, this is the perfect guy to do Captain America. I loved Captain America. It's like one of my favorite of the Marvel movies is that first Captain America.
Dude, we should do an episode on that.
We should. It's a class, and it feels like a classic kind of movie. Like, and again with this, they were trying to capture like a Spielberg, like a Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of,
like Amblin.
Yeah, Amblin, and like, and the way that like Raiders is like a Saturday morning serial. It was kind of like, okay, like this would, you know, whatever Raiders is based on, this is what's playing in the next theater over. Yeah, like
they were hoping it would have been sick for a Rocketeer 2.
Of course, yeah. It's I mean, they should have, you know.
Makes me sad.
Well, to me, it's like you hear all these stories where it's like, you know, something, it didn't, you know, the bottom line was no good. It didn't make money, so boom, it's done, and never heard from again. But to me, it's like, what's the point of having like an executive like why not just have like a mathematical formula? Why not just have a computer choosing this stuff? Because an executive could have like taste and like have their taste. You know, like, yeah, you gotta make sure your thing's making money, but every so often you can kind of take a chance on something where it's like, this thing is good, I know it's good, you know, and I know it lost money, but I think a Rocketeer 2 would do really well. Like, you know?
Tom, that's what I always think, that like movie making is still mysterious to me. But I think a large part of making a movie comes down to taste.
Yeah.
Like the taste of taste of a director.
If you're purely like looking at numbers, then it's like why is there even a job? You know, why is there even a job for that? Why isn't it just like you know, the accounting department decides what movies get made? You know?
I mean, now we can say movies get deleted, but but it should come down to taste, because like, you're an executive, you gotta pick it. What do you think after the movie releases and bombs? Is the movie just gonna vanish? Don't you want it to have like a long tail? If you made a good one, it's gonna like recoup it over time. Like,
right? Yeah.
Is it just gonna go away? Like,
it's such a strong start, and it's like, yeah, a Rocketeer 2. I guess part of it is like there was no more material. Like, they kind of do a version of like the first Rocketeer comic series, and then it took forever for Dave Stevens to do a sequel to it. So it's not, like they didn't have like a story ready to go. And the guy from Lost.
Oh yeah,
is
John
Howard
Locke
Hughes. Yeah, John Locke. Mr. Locke is Howard Hughes, and he's got hair. Yeah.
The design of that rocket pack is like iconic. I think about that too.
In the Rocketeer comic, he like peppers it with all these kind of 1940s and 1930s and 1940s kind of cameos and stuff. In the second Rocketeer series, it's like even more so. So like the Rocketeer teams up with the Shadow.
That'd be awesome.
So that kind of like when you get like
Rocketeer,
you get like a little like Avengers going where it's like the Rocketeer, the Shadow, the Phantom.
Now you're speaking my language.
I guess it would be like the League of Bombs, because it's like I love all three of those movies, and like dude, they all would have teamed up.
Jack Slater's in there too.
Jack Slater.
Also, we mentioned before, great Zeppelin work in this. I love good blimp work in a movie. Like, anytime there's blimps featured, it speaks to me. Like, I like how they're on top of it. With, like, you put that belt on to, like, walk on the top of the blimp.
In the Dave Stevens documentary, they're talking... Because, like, he considered a bunch of different things he could do with the Rocketeer, but I think he ended up only doing, like, 2 series. Maybe, like, a one-shot or something, but I think it was only the 2 series. But one of them was one of the things he was considering doing, which would have been awesome, was Rocketeer on Skull Island. So it'd be like Rocketeer meets King Kong.
Oh my god, Tom! I gotta track down. I want to.
Read the comics because it's not a huge body of work. It's like quality over quantity. It's not a huge body of work, so they have them like all collected in one volume.
That's
you can read
great.
Like the entirety of Dave Stevens.
Does he look like his look here in the comic? I can't.
Yeah, I mean, and you know what? Dave Stevens, like one of the things of his whole style is sort of glamour. So it's like a glammed up version.
Oh, cool.
So like, Cliff looks a little cooler, and of course it's like, it's Betty Page as Betty in the comic, and the Rocketeer's on his adventures and stuff, and then he calls up his girlfriend, and she's like posing for these like photographers and stuff. It's
he's all bedazzled Rocketeer.
Where in this she's like an aspiring actress, as opposed
Rocketeer on Skull Island. Oh man, that's awesome.
But they do a great job of like kind of building towards like where the movie's going, like testing the rocket, and it's just kind of flying around and stuff.
Yeah. Or he pushes that car.
Yeah.
In elementary school, I had the Rocketeer lunchbox.
Nice.
And I had like I had a lot of Rocketeer merchandise.
I remember they had like Rocketeer toys, but I don't think they ever had like a Rocketeer action figure.
I don't remember seeing one.
Like a little like metal, figurine or something, but never like an action figure, which would have been great. And I think that's another thing that because I was like the right age for this movie, because it felt like, oh wow, you could like strap that backpack on and fly. Like it's very convincing. Yeah, and when they make like the statue fly and stuff. Paul Sorvino as the mob guy. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
I like his goons are a little bit of a what they cover Dick Tracy run off. Like they got a little extra makeup on, it looks like.
Yeah, like Timothy Dalton is like way more of a heel in the movie than like the equivalent character was in the comic. Like in the comic it was kind of like he seems like he's a heel, but as it goes on it's like, oh yeah, it's just like a misunderstanding.
Timothy Dalton, I think he's like fences in all of his movies. He might have been, wasn't he fencing in Flash Gordon? It feels like he had like
yeah, and it's like he never got to play Robin Hood. Like he's playing like an Errol Flynn kind of character in this, and there's like the movie within the movie where he's playing kind of like like a Robin Hood, but it's like, man, a Timothy Dalton Robin Hood, and it's like holy we get shit. So close because like Prince Baron is kind of like a space Robin Hood and stuff, but we never we got Kevin Costner instead.
Dude, speaking, this was a good double feature because, I'm reading that Last Action Heroes book. Schwarzenegger was close to playing Flash Gordon.
That would
in the
cool.
Dino deal.
I mean, like, why not? One of the things that kind of kills the Dino De Laurentiis Flash Gordon, like I think it would have like bumped up a couple notches, is the bad voiceover. You know, because it's not Flash Gordon's like real voice, Sam, whatever his name is, Sam something or other. But it's not his real voice, and it's like, man, his real voice. And I imagine the Arnold Schwarzenegger one would have had a voiceover too. You know,
he's like it's cracking me up. He's bullying Dino De Laurentiis in the book. He's like Dino De Laurentiis has his deluxe desk, and he goes, "What does a small man like you need such a big desk for?"
That's great. Arnold would have been a great Flash Gordon, especially the approach they were taking with Flash Gordon, like in that movie.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
his arms exposed too in that outfit.
Yeah, because he's like a football player, and I'm trying to think who would have been a good like a Flash Gordon that was more like the comics Flash Gordon from that time, because he's like less bodybuilder and more athletic, in sort of like the classic like cartoons and comics and old serials. I'm trying to think like who would have been
a good Flash.
Like because the guy who plays Flash Gordon isn't quite it. Like again, he's great for that movie.
That was his one. He was a one and done. They're like
the Rocketeer. Like one of the highlights of the movie, which again, it's like a good thing of having Disney do it, is there's Nazi propaganda film within it where they're watching, and it's like these cartoon Rocketeers and stuff like that. That was very like convincing. It's like it was a really good piece of like fake history. You know, like
we can't let this rocket pack fall into the Nazis. Like that's their like it shows like their plan laid out.
And I know Disney, the big fight Disney had is they didn't like the Rocketeer's mask. They thought it was like too scary, too alien, and they want and they had to the producers of the movie had to fight really hard to like keep, because I mean that's, to me, the Rocketeer, like from the second I saw that image of the Rocketeer, I'm like, this is a Star is Born. And that's kind of how, like with the comic, it was like everybody who saw that character, like saw that design, it was just so, this kind of insectile face, and like to get rid of that. And what Disney wanted was they wanted just like kind of a helmet and goggles. And now there's like this animated Rocketeer on there, and that's what the look is. It's like the helmet and goggles, and it's like the most generic looking thing. Like, it just doesn't work at all.
I think about Last Action Hero and the Rocketeer like all the time. They're on my mind, and see, I don't even know how much of a bomb this was too. I don't know what, like if we look at the figures again,
slightly underperformed. Yeah, there's this period of time where Disney is like really struggling, and every time they do something where it's like, okay, people are going to like that. Like Tron was one. Tron was like, we are on the cut. Like everybody says how corny Disney is and this and that. This is a cutting edge movie. And then that bombs. And then this is kind of like that. It's like, here's something really cool, really like outside of the box. And then it's like, no thanks.
Forget it. I still think that the Rocketeer is, I feel like it has its fans now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think it always did. With Disney Plus, I feel like this was one of the movies where a lot of people like kind of discovered it or rediscovered it and were like, hey, this movie is pretty good. Because like I've watched it a couple times since.
Me too. Yeah. Like, I'm so glad it's on Disney Plus. Alan Arkin looks great with a mustache, too, by the way. He should have had it I don't know if he had it in more movies.
Well, I mean, he did play Clouseau in, like, Alan Arkin. There is like a Pink Panther movie where Arkin is Clouseau. I didn't know that. So, great companion piece to Joe Johnston's Captain America. 1940s nostalgia that, like, the 80s was kind of like your last chance for that. Because, like, by the 90s, it's like, okay, anybody who, like, remembers the 40s is, like, is not in the demographic that, like, buys, movie tickets or product or whatever. And, they're, now it's just, like, this movie takes place in, what, 1939 or 1940 or something? This movie takes place in 1939. And it's out in 1989. So that's 50 years. So, like, now, if you made Rocketeer, it would be 1979. It'd be like 1979. And, like,
Led Zeppelin, it falls into like a Toto's like.
Well, it would be like the Iranian hostage crisis.
Jimmy Carter gets the rocket pack. It's powered on like peanut oil or whatever.
It's powered on gasoline, and there's like a gasoline shortage. So good luck. Good luck filling this thing up.
Jimmy Carter's on his farm in George's peanut farm, and it shows him pushing the truck with the car. It looks so good.
Yeah, it's really fun. And again, like, man, if there was just a sequel, because like they set up the rocket pack, they get you there, and then there's a couple cool kind of set pieces involving the rocket pack, but it's like I want to see them do more with it. I want to see in the sequel, he starts out and he's got the rocket pack, so you got the whole movie to do all this cool stuff.
In the sequel, somehow he does something where the pack like upgrades. It's a super pursuit mode for his rocket pack. Some kind of like upgrade.
Well, in the movie, there's this like Rondo Hatton character they kind of invented for the movie. Like he wasn't in the comic at this point, but then when Dave Stevens does the like Rocketeer sequel comic, it like the Rondo Hatton character is like a big part of it.
Dude, I am getting the Rocketeer comic. I can't wait.
It's been reprinted in like a number of formats. It's sort of easy to find, but yeah, it's good stuff.
This kind of thing, definitely like a Dick Tracy. It looks like Mush Face or like Prune Face.
Yeah, it's kind of like there were like a string of these things, and none of them quite connected, like Rocketeer, Dick Tracy, The Phantom,
We have to do...
And I was at the theater for every single one of those. Like,
yeah.
And it was during that, like, superhero movie drought. So this was, like, the closest, these were basically superhero movies. So, like, I was there for every single one of these. But
I love it.
But everybody else wasn't pulling their weight, I don't think I missed one of these, because I saw Rocketeer in the theater. I saw The Shadow. I saw The Phantom.
There was gonna be a Green Hornet in that era with Greg Kinnear. I remember in Entertainment Weekly.
You know what? I love the Seth Rogen Green Hornet. Like,
I've never seen it. We should.
Yeah, we'll do that. I think it's great. Like, when Seth Rogen's interviewed about it, he's like, "Oh yeah, that movie sucked." I really fucked up. I thought it was great. I thought it was amazing. I've watched it a bunch of times since then.
Isn't Christoph Waltz in it?
Christoph Waltz is the villain.
Man, that's
awesome. It's a very good movie. I think I'm alone in that assertion. That Bulldog Cafe is straight out of the comic. Like they nailed so much of the comic. Again, except I mean, I guess like Betty Page was like 80 years old so they couldn't get her to play Betty, and
she had in her contract. It's like she had right of first refusal. They had to ask her.
Right.
She had to turn it down.
And there's Larry, Daryl, and Daryl is one of the guys in the bar from Newhart.
It shouldn't be a cult classic. It should be an actual classic.
I guess they can quantify this stuff now. Like they can. Like there's data. They know how many times it's been
streamed.
Viewed, streamed and whatnot.
Are we a few years or like a few months or years away from a Rocketeer limited series on Disney?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like they did that animated one that looks kind of cheapo or whatever. But if they like really, I guess maybe the numbers still aren't there for them to be like, oh, we got to bring back the Rocketeer.